Hi everyone, welcome to our today lecture. In our today lecture, we are going to discuss the theory of consumer behavior. In this lecture, we are going to discuss the different approaches to measure consumer behavior, or we can say that how to measure utility. Basically, there are two widely used concept theories to measure the utility. One is called cardinal approach and the other one is called ordinal approach. Cardinal approach is proposed or presented by Alfred Marshall, which is also known as the Marshallian approach, and the second one is ordinal approach, which is proposed or introduced by Hicks and Allen. That is also called indifference curve approach. So in our today lecture, we are going to discuss each of them one by one. So now let's discuss about the basic concept of utility. Basically, utility is a synonyms with pleasure, satisfaction and sense of fulfillment of desire. Basically, when we are thirsty and we want to drink water, and after drinking water our thirst or our desire for drinking will be fulfilled. So it means that water has the power to satisfy our want. And the second concept which is used for utility is wants satisfying power of a commodity. Utility is a psychological phenomena. What is meant by that utility is a psychological phenomena? It means that it is related to mental satisfaction. It is related to your mind. So that's why we are calling it as psychological phenomena. Now we will discuss that what are the different features of utility. Basically, the first feature of utility is that utility is subjective. What is meant by that utility is subjective? It means that it deals with the mental satisfaction of a man. For example, alcohol has utility for a drunkard, but not for a person who don't like drinking. It has no utility. So if a person is drinking alcohol, it might be possible that that particular person have utility in drinking alcohol, but alcohol has no utility for that person who is not drinking. Similarly, if a person is used to smoke, so a cigarette has a utility for that person who is smoking, but the cigarette has no utility for that person who is not smoking. And the second feature of the utility is that utility is relative. What is meant by utility is relative? It means that utility of a commodity never remains same. It varies with time, place and person. For example, heater has utility in winter but not during summers. So it means that everything has utility according to the time period, and it varies with different situations. Like here I just mentioned the example of heater. So heater are useful in winter season. They are not useful in summer season. Similarly, AC are useful in the summer season, but they are not useful in the winter season. So that is the meaning of that utility is relative. Utility varies from time, place and person to person. And furthermore, feature of utility is that utility is not essentially useful. What does it mean? It means that a commodity having utility not to be useful. For example, cigarette is not useful, but it satisfies the want of an addict. Those have utility for him. So it means that it is not necessary that everything which have utility that might be useful. Like here I mentioned the example of a smoker who is smoking a cigarette. The cigarette is just satisfying his utility, but it does not mean that that cigarette is useful for him. As you all know that smoking is injurious to health. It has multiple side effects for the smokers. So that is meant by utility is not essentially useful. And one more feature of the utility is that utility is ethically neutral. It means that utility has nothing to do with ethics. Use of liquor may not be good from the moral point of view, but as these intoxicants satisfy want of the drunkards, they have utility. Okay, so basically these are the major features of the utility. And now we will discuss that what are the different concepts of the utility. The first concept of the utility is that initial utility, then total utility, and at last we will discuss about marginal utility. So now let's start by initial utility. Initial utility means the utility which we have from the consumption of first unit of a commodity. The utility which you take from the first glass of water, from the first bite of pizza, or anything which you are using, the first unit of that commodity utility is called initial utility. And total utility, the total utility means the aggregate or the sum of utility obtained from the consumption of the different units of commodity. As you can see here that total utility equals to utility from the first unit or utility from the second unit plus utility of the third plus utility of the fourth and up to so on. So when you add up the utility of all the number of units which you have consumed, so sum of the all unit which you have consumed, the sum of that unit consumed utility is called total utility. And there is one another concept of the utility that is called marginal utility. What is meant by marginal utility? Marginal utility means that the utility which you gain by using or by taking one extra unit of any commodity. Or you can see that change in total utility resulting from the change in consumption. As here this formula for marginal utility equals to total utility of all the number of units consumed plus total utility from n minus 1, which is current minus previous. And there are some types of marginal utility. Positive marginal utility. What is meant by positive marginal utility? As we have discussed earlier that marginal utility means that utility which we have by consuming one extra unit. So as long as we are taking another and one more and more and more unit of any commodity, and its utility remains same, or we can say that it has positive effect on the total utility. So that extra advantage from that particular good is called marginal utility or the positive marginal utility. And zero marginal utility, and when we are continuously using a good, we reach a point where the utility of that particular good becomes zero. And negative marginal utility means that when we reach a point where the marginal utility of any particular good becomes zero, and if we still continue to consume that good after that point, then its utility will becomes negative. We can take the example of water. When you are very thirsty, so you would like to drink water. The first glass of water or the first unit which you have take will give you the maximum utility, and the second unit will give you less satisfaction, and third will give more less as compared to the second one, and you reach a point when you say that now I have maximum amount of water. So it means that now your utility from water has been fully satisfied. But if you still continue to consume more number of glass of waters, then you feel like the conditions of vomiting. So it means that now that utility will becomes negative. In our today lecture, we are just finished here, and in our next lecture we just start from next point.